This is the Gauntlet Con wrap-up episode 121. I am Rich.
I'm Lowell.
I'm Rach.
And I'm Kate.
All right. I am excited to have all of you all on. Jason was unable to make it. He's got some stuff. He's running some Halloween-themed games at the moment and unable to join us as we record here on Halloween, All Hallows Eve. Isn't that how it goes? All Hallows Eve.
Isn't this Devil's Night?
Yeah, I was going to say it's Devil's Night in Southern Ontario.
Devil's Night always makes me think of The Crow. Always makes me think of The Crow. I never even heard of the concept until the movie came out. We are going to talk about Gauntlet Con, our recently completed first annual online role-playing game convention. There were a lot of things that went on. Kate and I were the co-organizers, so Kate was gracious enough to hop on with us to chat about it. So Kate, let's talk about Gauntlet Con. I know you've probably already thinking about Breakout Con.
Breakout Con never ends.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about Gauntlet Con. What was it? The beginning of the year when I reached out to you and I said, hey, Jason asked me to do this convention and I have no idea what I'm doing. Will you help me?
Which was great because I also have never run an online con. I was like, yeah, sure. So now what?
Can't be hard.
Right. New skills. Important new skills. Gauntlet Con was fascinating. I think it was wildly successful as far as I can tell. And I was really, really pleased with the results. I was very, very happy to see what came out of it because most people know I don't tend to play games with the Gauntlet community just because I'm so busy facilitating games in real life for Toronto area gamers with Rach that it was neat to actually be in the community. Like it was neat to sit there on the Discord and just like listen to people decompress and check in on all the panels and check in on all the games and kind of be a little bit of a spy running around, making sure everyone was being amazing, and everyone was being amazing. Like it was a really touching experience to see how the Gauntlet Con was just an extension of Gauntlet community in a way where people were doing tone conversations, people were checking in with each other, people were going to a voice chat to decompress afterwards and do check-ins. And I was like, oh, it's so beautiful.
It was, and it was great to see a lot of the culture spontaneously just happen there. Like we had not created a debrief channel on the Discord, and some folks were like, we definitely need to debrief this game. Let's have some after chat about that. Unless you're running to another game, hop in here. And they made that happen. And that was really neat to see.
Yeah. And it started becoming kind of like common practice where people were like, oh, well, it's decompression time now. And I'm like, yes, that's a thing over there in that chat there. Right. And I love things when things like organically happen at your conventions because it means you've done your job well. It means you've got a community that's functioning and doing its thing. And even though normally at newer cons, they would tell you what they needed and then you would have to go make that thing happen for next year. It was like we could immediately respond to it because we didn't have to be in a physical space. And that was it blew my mind a little. I'm not going to lie. I'm so used to being like, yes, next year. Talk to me in a month.
Yeah, we don't have enough resources. Go make a new hangout. Make a new channel right now. Like on Thursday, the con hadn't even begun. And you were like, we need to be able to create a pickup game channel because these crazy monkeys want to play Cheat Your Own Adventure right now. And I'm like, okay, let's do that thing.
That'll happen. Sure.
Oh, you definitely had like the hanging out by the hotel bar happening Thursday night with people just in the Discord chatting.
Yeah, there were some people who never left. It was hilarious. Like, oh yeah, Tim Hortons is still hopping. One of the channels started off being named a tavern, and then after time it morphed into a Tom Hortons, which I'm given to believe is Tim. See, there you go. I'm given to believe some kind of Canadian thing. Sorry.
Harsh. But you know what? It was the place to be.
We named it as a joke, and then everyone kept going there.
Yes, especially people from the help desk, like River and Maria, who were, I feel like they were kind of help desk all the time because they were always on and listening to people and engaging people, and they had the answers before I could even say the answers. So I felt like we had such a good support team, and like people just really came together to make it such a fantastic convention that I mostly sat there all weekend. Like, I didn't do much.
That's awesome. You know, what's funny about the help desk team is, remember early on we talked about, I said, okay, we need to have some kind of help desk. How do you do that? And she said, mostly I do the stuff, right? That's what you were saying. Like, I mostly have to do all the things. I'm like, I don't know. It's really good. I think we pick the right people who are helpful, thoughtful, and proactive. And man, was this help desk team on point the whole time. There were times where I was like, oh, that's a good thing. They've already pinned it. Oh, they're already answering it. Yeah, it blew my mind. I was so thankful every moment of the con. Oh, Lowell,
I think you are discounting your contributions to this. Sherry was like, on Friday, she was like, I'm just watching Rich. Got beep, 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 beep. Everything he's doing there, and he's setting things up, and he's making them go. And when she had to do help desk on Saturday, she was like, I just sat there. Everyone else did it. So
Sherry was great. She was the 8 a.m. shift. All the people who were causing trouble and being crazy, they were asleep.
You were definitely helping out in terms of setting up and providing question flow with the panels. I don't know how the panels would have worked without you feeding questions from Discord chats.
I'm glad that worked out for you guys. I remember back when YouTube Live had a question answer thing, and it was really neat. And I wish that functionality was kind of still there and widely used, but coming in, I knew, how are you going to actually keep an eye on a Discord? Because imagine trying to answer questions on a Twitch live stream. It just seems unmanageable. Like Misdirected Mark, they do a great job with Bob or whoever else would be the person who's kind of monitoring it and feeding information from the chat room to Chris and Phil. And I thought, we really need somebody to facilitate that. And I had already committed that I was going to do little to no gaming. I broke that because Lowell's awesome. But
as
other
you
than
should.
that, yeah, right. But I'm glad that it worked out, and it was super fun because we could be real time, right? There was only a slight delay between the panel as it was going live, and some panels, it was mostly, hey, let's just do this whole panel and we'll take questions at the end. Some people were changing and pivoting in the middle of audience oriented questions. And it was neat because when I go to panels at conventions, it's much like, we're going to do our thing for 75 to 80% of it, and then we'll take some questions at the end. And sometimes you can hear the questions, sometimes you can't. Like, there's always those things with a live panel that I've found, for me, have made it a little rough to fully get all of that information. But for a live panel, the way you guys handled the questions especially was really strong. And I appreciated being on the other side of it, just kind of being an audience member who occasionally would just copy and paste. And I didn't have to do work. I was just helping. It was fun. The Queering Games panel was one of my favorites. I was blown away with, River. They worked so hard to set it up. And I got a chance to look at the outline, which, Kate, another great idea of putting that in the central location so I could keep an eye on that. And it was just awesome. Richard, Rain, and Avery were on that, and their chat was so educational for me from another perspective of how to think about games. Absolutely should check all of those panels out, right? Because they're all online. They're all linked in a playlist.
They're all on YouTube.
Yeah.
Great.
It is really cool. We may be grabbing some of those to put out on the podcast feed at some point. Hopeful to do a little bit of filler as we start to wind down a little bit as we come to the end of the year so everybody can recharge their batteries. So maybe our wonderful editor, Paul, can pull the audio from some of those, because I think they should be shared across the podcast feed. Kate, any other thoughts about Gauntlet Con before we hear from Lowell and Rach?
Well, on a note of panels, I wanted to say that one of their favorite things that we did, and this was just kind of a you and I sitting there figuring out what panels we're going to have, and both of us just going, we're just going to put community members on these panels. we don't need to have guests for all of them. Like, this isn't about guests. This is about the Gauntlet community, and we need to hear from the Gauntlet community. So we were pulling people who were like, why would I be on a panel? And I loved being like, no, you're important. Your voice matters. And having those people get to organize and be on panels instead of just being like, okay, well, the only people who matter are our guests. Right? Like, I liked that decision that we made together. I thought that was a really great moment.
I was scared of it. Like, I was afraid this one would be like, you know what? No, Rich, I really don't like. I really don't want to do that thing. But everybody stepped up, and they stepped up really in a committed way, a giving way, worked super hard to make these things awesome. There's another panel that Lowell wants to talk about, but it was also one of my favorites, because it blew me away.
And I just want to say, you talk about the work of the help desk and all of that stuff that went on. I've done face-to-face cons, very minor stuff and things. And I've been to a couple of other online conventions. The work that you guys put in ahead of time, the pre-work, the setup, all of that paid off so well in the end. And it was so well organized. I saw Paul Sega say in one of the chat channels, I cannot believe that this is a first-year online convention because it's the best organized thing I've ever seen. And I may be paraphrasing him, but that's certainly my feeling. It was the best organized, certainly, convention I've been to. Now, I haven't been to Breakout or any of those, and I'm sure those are even more brilliant, but they are fallible because they're in meat space. But this was... Sherry and I spent, like all weekend going, can you believe how good this is? And how smooth it's going? Unbelievable to me. Just the work that you put in paid off so well. Crazy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. It's really great. And I think that happened because Rich and I have such different skill sets that they blended so well together. We were both pretty on point in terms of what we needed organization wise, but where I didn't know what to do anything tech, Rich was like, do not worry, I got you. And where he had never experienced like scheduling and stuff, it was like, don't you worry, I got you.
Yeah, that schedule, I would still be working on it, guys. Seriously. And the confidence that you brought to every challenge that we faced was so helpful, Kate. Like, and there were things that happened in the middle of the con where I'm like, okay, this is a thing that's happened. What do I do? What do I do? On the side, like, it's cool, man. We've got this, and this. Okay, good. All right, awesome. Okay.
And you can't underestimate the flaw that I've seen in so many other conventions is not knowing where to go, to get help, to get support, to get assistance. And especially because you are just at your house, and I never felt like I was ever working without a net.
Perfect. Yeah. That's what we want to hear, right? Like, I think the help desk was Rich's idea, and it was, at the time, I was like, no, it's fine. We got it. We can just do it. We don't need sleep. We can just be there. I'm so, I've learned nothing, right? I think that was one of the best ideas. And seeing those people at the help desk, it's like, these are our organizers for next year, right? Like, you look at them and that team that came together and you're like, oh, well, I'm not worried about next year.
It was funny too, as we were working on help desk, I said, so do you have any like documentation to kickstart a manual? Because I want to have stuff for them to go to. And you're like, yeah, kind of, sort of. And I looked at it and it's like, oh man, this is all meat space related stuff. Crap, we've got to start all over again. Okay. And then I'm getting halfway through and I'm like, I'm just going to do an FAQ with some links because I have no idea what we're going to run into. And I threw it out to the help desk and they're like, let's just meet. Let's talk for a little bit. And Crystal's like, we need this, this, and this. And everybody was, here's some suggestions and here's some ideas. And by the time we got there, everybody had already had a communication, had an idea. They were doing things live on the fly. Like, hey, when people start these games, I'm going to go jump in because here's the link and I'll make sure everybody's good to go. And then I'll pop back out. I'm like, wow, what a great idea. Oh, well, everybody's trying to find links to their games. We'll just pin up those games in that channel so that it's easy to find. Bam. I wish I'd thought of that. And here they are doing it on the fly, right? Oh, so great.
Help desk made Gauntlet Con.
Yes. 100%.
Help desk was amazing.
Yeah.
We'll stipulate that.
We're just going to say, thank you. Yeah, I think the only other thing I think that blew me out of the water was our guest support was actually pretty good. I wasn't sure what the response would be. Would be like, hey, can you come on to Hangouts and run some games for the Gauntlet? Because we're nice people. But the response was pretty good. And they, not only that, but they like hung out on the Discord and like were available for people to sit there and talk with and hang out with. And you don't really get that in like a physical convention as much because they're busy.
Right.
They're off networking. They're doing stuff. So this one's like, no, they're just going to sit on their ass and sit in front of a computer for a few hours. So of course they're going to hate on the Discord and talk to people. And it felt like I had more time to see them interact with the Gauntlet community than I would have if this had been a physical convention.
Mm-hmm.
And that delighted me. So I don't know. Everyone came together to make this really awesome thing. And it didn't give me the same buzz as sitting in a room watching like 300 people sit down at tables.
Right.
But it gave me a much more like, oh, I get it. I get why people like this. And I get why this is important. And it was really touching to see everyone come together and make this happen.
Yeah. And of course, one of the secret agendas was for a lot of the members of the community to step up and run games and go, you know what, crap, I want to run some more games.
Right.
These amazing people. And that's been pretty successful.
Looking at the schedule going forward.
Yeah, it's awesome. So awesome. Rach, what did you think? What was your Gauntlet Con experience? What do you want to talk about the stuff you did?
My Gauntlet Con experience was a surprising amount of socialization, which was fascinating. I'm pretty social in meat space cons. I love the Discord chat. So we were talking about earlier, Tim Hortons came out of a bunch of us Canadians hanging around talking on Discord and deciding, oh, well, we should rename it Tim Hortons. And then people kept slipping in and going, I'm curious, why is this called the Tim Hortons Tavern? And we would just sit there and like the topics would always be about games and gaming. There was one point where we were spamming, there was the Quiet Tavern, which was a text-only tavern, but we were having conversations about Puerto Rican culture with Maria and Canadian culture with our Canadian guests and attendees. We kept spamming out-of-context pictures into the Quiet Tavern. So it would be like, here's, twice fried plantains, and here's Justin Trudeau with some pandas and no other explanation.
Yes.
It's so bizarre.
Oh, it was so funny. But I just love hanging out. It was just, I was joking about it. It was like being at the hotel bar or in the hotel lobby because people would kind of breeze in, breeze out. They'd have to go to a game or an event. I love that spirit of community, and it was pretty fabulous. The panels, I was involved with a couple of them, and they were all pretty near and dear to my heart. I was moderating the diversity and inclusivity panel on Sunday morning, and we had Eddie Webb and Stephanie Bryant on to discuss it. And it was just this fantastic panel where both designers just, like a lot of times with discussions about diversity, we talk about our success stories, and they opened up and they talked about where they had struggled and where they had to take a step back from their projects and realize, oh no, I made this terrible misstep. Because you can go in trying earnestly to make the most diverse and inclusive game possible and then not realize where your blind spots are. And it was just these moments of these experienced, talented designers going, hey, I screwed up. Here's how I learned I screwed up, and here's what I did to fix it, which I think is, if you look at that panel, because it's, of course, on the YouTube feed, that it's just a fantastic segment. And then Stephanie brought a tremendous amount of resources, because one of the questions we had was, no, we've talked about how important it is to have diverse, inclusive members on your game team. Well, how do you go about doing that? And she came in with just like this whole page of all these leads saying, like, here's where you go on Twitter, and here's how you go find Black Twitter, and here's how you go find all the marginalized gamers there. Here's where you find the marginalized gamers on Facebook, and here's the keywords you want to look for. Here's where you find them on G+. Is places I hadn't even heard of. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was funny is I was helping, so I was looking at the outline and she rattled all this stuff out, and I'm trying to write it down furiously because I'd only looked on the first page of the outline, and I messaged them like, you have to have a list of that. People are asking in the Discord, you have to have a list. And Rich, look on the second page. Oh,
it's
nice.
all there.
Now, what does she do it so quickly? She was reading a list that she'd already prepared. How smart.
I saw it right before the panel because I was setting up my panel notes for moderating, and then I scrolled down, and it was just all these notes and contact points. I'm like, whoa. We had, I actually, as a moderator, had to make a decision at one point, which was, do you go with discussing the negative aspects of making a diverse game or an inclusive game team and talk about just what people have to deal with, or do you spend all this time to focus on this research Stephanie brought to the table? And I'm like, we're going to focus on this research right now. And we gave a little bit of attention to how to deal with harassers earlier on, but I really think that making that decision and giving that much space for Eddie and Stephanie to talk about, this is how I've found creators and this is how I've hired people, really did the panel a lot of favors.
Absolutely. And it made it stand out because personally, there have been diversity panels where I feel like I'm being talked at. And this felt like a conversation where people were sharing best practices and talking about how to make it happen. It was actionable content. Whereas sometimes I feel like I will listen into a podcast or a panel about diversity and I'm kind of just told how terrible I am. And
yeah,
I don't make games.
It's a thin line to walk. I made a decision with moderating that I was just going to take a step back, that this was not, because sometimes you get moderators who do use this opportunity to talk about their thoughts and beliefs. I'm like, it's going to be about Eddie and Stephanie. And I'm just going to every once in a while, pass the mic metaphorically back and forth and just let them talk for an hour. And it was great. I'm so honored to have the privilege of being involved with that panel. I also liked there was the Kate and Rach talk about feels panel, which was a joke. I think I was being silly in Messenger one day. And Kate was talking about panel submissions for Gauntlet Con. I'm like, oh, hold on, Kate. I'm going to submit Kate and Rach talk about stuff or something. It was a parody of Ken and Robin talk about stuff. And that evolved into Kate and Rach talk about feels because I thought it was funny. But we had a couple of great questions about making emotional spaces and emotional safety in play. It wasn't what I would consider a deep dive into the subject, but I think it covered like a lot of good starting points. How'd you feel about that one, Kate?
I was so tired by the time we got to that panel because I think I had been staying up because Rich was tending to finish the last game slot starting and then going to bed like a sane person. And
what?
Sleep was awesome, guys. It was great.
Right. Well, you would also get up early to start everything. So I was the one who stayed up late to check in with all those people at the end because I'm a night owl kind of person. And then I would get up a little bit later in the day because I knew Rich would be there.
Yep. and Sherry and Tom.
So by the time the Kate and Rach talk about feels came around, I was pretty loopy. I was in a pretty good mood, and I was like, let's just do this thing.
Oh yeah, there was like a couple of questions, and we just got questions from the Discord. I do remember at one point, I'm like, you could talk about happy feelings. And you're like, whoa, happiness is a feeling.
Happiness? What?
It should have been a sign you were super tired.
No, it actually it was one of those moments where I was like, obviously happiness is a feeling. Why do I discount it all the time? Whoops. It was a good moment. I liked the panel. It was fun. Yeah, I dug it, but I was super tired.
You're super tired, obviously, because you turned that happiness is a feeling into a great answer, which was super good. Talking about using that as a way to do MC moves that don't always end in tragic sadness. That was pretty good. You did that to us before.
You make them feel happy before you smack them back down again.
So mean.
Well, I applied a lot of that later on. Earlier, the night before, I was running Ryotama, and it was an 8:00 start. I'm like, okay, guys, Ryotama, depending how you spin it, can be an emotional game. It can be very dungeon crawly. I'm going to run it chill. You guys are going to set, the pace you want to go at. And there was one point I crushed one of my players because he was playing the minstrel, and I did a very Apocalypse World answer to a botched roll, which wasn't, he was trying to negotiate, could I have the stage in this tavern to go perform? And he failed it really hard. And my answer was, oh, well, it's not that you fail. It's that there's another minstrel who just walks right in, sets up his stuff on the stage and starts going at it, and everyone's paying attention to him. And there's no way, if you keep going down that path, that you'd be able to pull the audience's attention back to you.
Oh, that's harsh.
And it became a big thing.
Oh.
Yeah, Ryotama. I also read Urban Shadows in my strange Niagara setting because I went with the idea that Niagara Falls is a very weird place if you've never been. It's a very strange area of Canada. So I could bring that setting to the table and be like, so you might have a really weird idea and you might come to me and say, Rach, is this idea too weird? And I'm like, oh, no, it's Niagara Falls. It's just weird enough.
Nice. Lowell.
Well, I want to actually say Rach was also on the PBTA panel, and there were several times during her comments and discussion on there that I was desperately scribbling stuff down because it was sharper and more insightful than anything I thought about PBTA in the past. And then from her comments, my wife and I have worked maybe 6-7 hours now on doing a Harvest Moon PBTA game because of her comments there, and we're going to be working on that. And it was such a good panel, and you did such a good job with that. And I came in sort of, this would be fun, and I came away energized and excited about PBTA again based on the stuff that you put forward.
Oh, it was such a fantastic panel. At that point, I hadn't realized I could turn off the Discord alerts, so I kept getting pop-ups from the panel chat because when you were in these panels, you couldn't really view the panel chat, but I just kept seeing everyone's questions, and the community was so enthusiastic about that panel. And there was all these fantastic questions we never got around to just because we only had an hour.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have reached out to me, and I think this was someone asked, was there part of gaming genres that Powered by the Apocalypse hadn't reached? And I'm a big fan of his what you would call a honobono or pastoral games, and said I haven't found one that really grabs me yet. And then my inbox was full of I have this idea, should I pursue it?
The answer is always yes, right?
Go build, go hack, go forth.
That talking about that after the panel inspiration, Mark Causey ran a Monster Hearts game at Gauntlet Con, and I had the fortune of he kind of previewed it with me. We ran a little playtesty version of it a couple weeks before the con, and the idea of it is it was almost like a love letter to Monster Hearts because the opening of the game it's the second season of this TV show, and here are all the terrible things that happened in the season finale that we fill in. And Paul got the opportunity to play in it at Gauntlet Con. For the next 2 days, he didn't talk to me because he was writing his own thing inspired by second season. Like he was fanficking this game. It was so great.
That's awesome.
A little lonely for me, but that's okay. I've got, other stuff to do.
It reminded me of, I think we had someone when we ran Fan Expo showed up one year asking where a certain GM was. And we're like, why? And he's like, because I wrote a fanfic about the game he ran me back last year, and I need to show it to him.
Nice.
I love it when people get nerdy inspiration from conventions. It's so good.
Lowell, what else did you do at Gauntlet Con?
So my stuff was mostly running, and the panels, the one panel I did. And of course, I listened as Sherry was on the Being a Great Player panel with Yoshi and Patrick, and I adored that. I am biased because I love Sherry and I love the other two people as well. And it was so much fun. It was a nice lead in. I ran, of course, 4 sessions of Worldwide Wrestling, which is stupid, dumb, just goofiness. And it was great. I had only 2 players in the first session, and it was still wondrous. And all the other sessions were great. I had 15 different players over the 4 sessions. 2 of them had played Worldwide Wrestling with me before. Another 5 I'd run for before. But 8 people I'd never run for. And some of them who'd never been at Gauntlet before. So that was just great. And there were people who played in a couple of different sessions. So there was some weird story continuity that was going on between the 4 sessions, and tied back to the sessions I've been running throughout the month. And I love that. So that was really cool. One of my favorite things, and is that some of our Gauntlet people reached out to me. I had put the offer up to work with them one-on-one before the con. So I worked, I had sat down with Tyler. I sat down with Chris Miller. I sat down with Charles Gatz. And then Maria was kind enough. She's an experienced GM, but she hadn't run online as much. So she ran Dungeon World, a little thing for Sherry and I. And it was great to see them do that. And I hope it helped. And I actually had the person who runs Fate at that, Richard Glover, he contacted me afterwards, and I watched his game, and then we sat down and talked about how he ran it and what he did, and I said, you did a hell of a job.
Nice.
And so it was nice to be able to be super affirmative and say, yes, you can run it. It's going to be awesome. You are going to be awesome. You're an awesome person. And they were, and they were all great. And so I love that, and I want to do more of that. I absolutely want to do more of that for the Gauntlet because it was just so good.
Isn't it the best?
It's incredibly
It
nice.
is. It is. And let me tell you this. This certainly is no credit to me, but I sat in on a game because I love Godbound, a little OSR stupid game. Maria was running it. Mm-hmm. I get there. I'm one of the 4 seats. The other 3 seats are Mark Diaz Truman, mm-hmm. Mad J. Brown, and Brendan Conway. No pressure there.
I'm glad you brought that up because when I saw that, I was like, I would be freaking out, man. How did it go?
Yeah, I got there early. Yeah, I talked to her leading up to it, and when she got rolling, you couldn't tell at all.
Nice.
She was on it. So that was super nice to see. And they're of course all great players. So I had to have my game up. And the feedback was really good, really solid. Good positive feedback where they had some suggestions. They were really good and right on, perceptive. The only thing I would say is a negative is that Sherry and I played in Mad J. Brown's Tenra Bancha Zero game, and she was like, "Wow, he's really good. He's a really good GM." I'm like, "Yeah, he is. Oh yeah." She's like, if you weren't around, that might be the person I'd be. No, we don't need to hear that. So.
Yeah, Maria's game and watching her go into it and come out of it and have that moment, and then seeing Mark Diaz Truman post dreams to her about her game after, and that whole experience was probably my number one favorite thing about Gauntlet Con. I'm not gonna lie, was witnessing people being nervous, do their game, and then realize they're rock stars, and have the dream thread afterwards where everyone was affirming each other. It just made me so happy. It's just,
And that's something we should mention. Your dream thread, putting that up immediately at the end was
genius.
So genius, absolute genius.
Way to go, Kate. That was so
stellar.
Nice.
Aftercare.
Would never have occurred to me. I'm a dude. I just we're done here. I'll walk away now. So it was so good to have that there.
Well, it was actually stolen from Rob, who did that for Breakout one year, where to win our prizes, you had to fill out positive feedback for your GMs so that we could give lovely things to our GMs. I'm like, I'm just going to post it.
No, it was great.
Yeah, that was the best.
Low pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I want to circle back to just highlight the panel about players. I listen to a lot of RPG podcasts, and I'll be damned if they aren't all GMs talking to GMs. They are all GMs talking to GMs, or game designers talking to GMs talking to game designers. The players panel is something that we sorely have needed for a long time. Yoshi headed up that panel, and the whole of that hour is chock full of essential things that will make your gaming life better. The kind of thing that you should share with every group that you join, because their insight and their expertise is just not stuff that you hear anywhere else. Maybe snippets, maybe pieces of it. Maybe it's things that you pick up from other folks, but to have that concentrated goodness right there, man, I love that panel. I was feeding them questions and just sitting back going, oh man, this is so, what would Lauren say? So good. I don't know if I can do the Lauren impression. It's awesome. So I loved that panel a lot.
The topic is something that I think the community struggles to make space for, because I think we've gone so much to valuing the role of the GM that it's easy to dismiss the role of the player as someone who is just consuming content and not contributing content. But it is collaborative storytelling, and the player is playing a role with a very different set of tools. We just tend to overlook it and dismiss that role.
Mm-hmm. If we're taking collaboration seriously, we have to really look at the player side of things. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And we also talk about GM-less games. We talk about that shared narrative authority, but we don't necessarily follow up on the other end. It's like, well, GMs make them do that thing.
It's true.
Go be a rock star and be a dancing monkey and do all the work, but that's not going to make it work.
Just figure it out, man.
Hey, as a GM, players can make or break a game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if my players aren't having a good time or not expressing that, or even the case of just maybe internalizing things too much. I mean, I think I've discussed the idea of having a broken feedback loop where you have a very emotional game and your players are really deeply entrenched in those emotions. As a GM, it feels like you're staring at like a party from a window, standing outside in the snow. Like, I think I understand Monster Hearts, I think.
They understand Monster Hearts. I just keep them mixing up. And yeah, I hear you on that one. Well, that was really good. Any closing thoughts on Gauntlet Con?
I'm excited for Gauntlet Con 2018.
Yeah, actually, seriously. Yeah. I hate to do that to you. I hate to say that right now, but yeah, Rach is right.
Lowell, we should run.
God. Oh, my feed's getting cut off. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Hang
no.
on.
Oh, I was just going to say probably my final thoughts are how much I just want to thank you for being my partner in crime on this one.
Thank you.
Everyone who stepped up in the community, the help desk, you, Lowell, as well, and Rach, and everyone who did all the panels, and our guests, and Jason for being a rock star and running 50 million things.
Thank you.
Including every panel under the sun. I just want to thank the community for making it happen, right? Because, sure, we shoved it into a box that looked like a community con box, but people had to open the box and make things out of it. So they did a good job, and it's amazing. It really was touching. So I want to thank them.
Absolutely. Thank you, all of you, for being part of Gauntlet Con. And last bit, right? I posted a little thing after, but just to say there was no con drop here, right? The Gauntlet community, okay, there maybe is a little, but generally we had games going on that next week. We continue to run awesome games. That's what this community does. I felt like it was a little bit of a coming out party for all of the best practices in the community building that we've all participated in for quite a while now. And I'm excited to see the Gauntlet community grow with all the people who have fun with this at Gauntlet Con. It's awesome. It's really, really amazing. Well, we will go ahead now and take a break. Nice transition, Rich. We're going to take a break here. We'll come back with some Giving Me Life. It's Giving Me Life. This is the part where we talk about something not necessarily related to RPGs that's inspiring us with happiness or filling us with joy. Kate, you have to have an answer. I'm going to lead off by talking about, so this past weekend, my son turned 12, and the 3 weeks leading up to it, he decided he wanted to have some of his buddies over from school, and they wanted to have a sleepover. And I said, well, this is kind of loose. Like, what are you just going to do? Because last year you did the same thing and you guys played video games until 4 a.m. and you're mostly grumpy at each other. What do you want to actually happen? He said, well, Dad, I want to play a LARP.
What?
What?
Ruh-roh.
Holy
yes,
cow.
The thing is that, he has wanted to participate in the LARPs at Camp Nerdly. He's been a few years. In fact, this past year he didn't go because I told him none of these, there's one LARP and it's the walking around the woods and LARP. He's like, I don't care about that. But that's the LARP you can participate in. The rest of them are all for grown-ups and stuff. He's like, man, when do I get to play in a LARP? So he said, for my birthday, I want a LARP. And then he decided next level it because I started asking around, and Alex Roberts had shared this one idea. And then he said, I want it to be Fallout themed, Fallout 4, the video game. And I'm like,
Can't blame him.
No. Right. Yeah. So that led to some long conversations as he shared all of the lore of Fallout 4. Yeah. This is a kid who's pretty obsessed. So the Fallout 4 LARP that we played was the first half. We had gone out to a costume shop and we got some costumes. So one kid was a ghoul. My son got to wear a cool 3-corner hat because he was the leader of the Minutemen faction. Yes. And then we had some like makeup for the railroad, and the whole thing was a King of the Hill Nerf battle that we led off with. And as we walked out to the area where we'd set up for King of the Hill, I had a bunch of Fallout 4 music that was playing, and Uranium Fever came on. My son was like super jamming to that. I love the Kate's reaction to this. She's a big
so
fan.
good.
So it's so good. And then we get out and they do this Nerf battle, and I'm not going to say that my son's friends are all video game couch potatoes, but they had to take a break in the middle because they were tired, which was kind of weird. But okay, we did that. We took a break in the middle of a Nerf battle. And then we came back, and I've never actually played Are You a Werewolf? To me, Are You a Werewolf has always been that thing at conventions where everyone's sitting in a circle and occasionally yelling at each other or slamming their hands on tables and being loud and obnoxious while I'm trying to play a role-playing game. But I reskinned it for Are You a Synth?
Since, that's so good.
Yeah, kind of like the Terminator in Fallout 4. So they appear as human. And I went online and I grabbed some pictures, and we had vault dwellers and then a vault scientist, which took the place of the seer, which is a person they can ask a question. And then we had a synth, and it was only 5 boys. So 1 synth, 1 seer, which was the scientist, and everybody else vault dwellers. And it took a bit for them to get it because they had no, like, what's a deduction game? I don't understand. Like, what are my rules? Do I tell them I'm a scientist? I'm like, you can tell them whatever you want, but they don't have to believe you. So we get over that hump of explaining it. And the first game goes, and it's like, they're not entirely sure what's going on. And as soon as it ends, they want to play again. And every kid that got the synth card would just giggle furiously, get accused, and get killed. It took them 20 minutes before any of them had any kind of strategy. But by the end, they were like double crossing each other and like checking to see how people would react to cards. They were super into it. And it was glorious, man. And I remember one of them looking at the cards and I'm like, where did you buy this? I'm like, I didn't buy it. I made it.
Whoa.
You made this? And I'm like, you can make games, bro. You could totally make this too. I said, yeah, I took the basic rules, right? But I reskinned it, and you can do it. And one kid was like, we need to do Are You a Sith? We need to do that like right now. We're going to do Are You a Sith? And so they were super inspired. It was great. My son loved it. He was so happy with the Fallout LARP. I was proud that he was game for all bits of this, and he helped with the costume. So he got, there was a lot of buy-in. It was definitely his favorite part, other than getting a Nintendo Switch, his favorite part of the overall birthday sleepover. Although I think the Nintendo Switch is probably going to have a longer lifespan. My memories of Fallout LARP, but it was fun. That gave me a lot of life over the last couple weeks.
That makes me so happy.
Sounds amazing.
Kate, what's giving you life?
Your kid's birthday party, obviously. So when I had to first fill this out, I actually wrote nothing. Like, I literally wrote the word nothing because my anxiety has been really, really bad, and I've been in a lot of physical pain, and I have a lot to do, so I've been very stressed. I don't super have anything other than to say, like, my anxiety meds are legitimately making my life better right now, and they're getting me through this storm, as is naproxen. So you know what? I'm going to take my hat off to taking care of yourself. Some self-care is giving me life, because otherwise I would just be a little wallflower right now. So I'm going to be a little bit more real.
When Sherry convinced me to look at the anti-anxiety meds like I hadn't had before, and I was like, I will not be fine. And then I did it, and the quality of life improvement is significant.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's giving me life right now, because otherwise life would suck more.
That's important. Thank you for sharing and being honest. That's awesome. Lowell, what's giving you life? I'm saving Rach for the end. For these guys.
That's so good.
So I am a scaredy cat. I love horror movies, but I have to cover my ears during them. But I love them, adore them, and because I don't, the sounds get me. But anyway, we used to have an Alamo Draft House about an hour and a half away from us, and it was great. And for a couple of years, they did this thing called Dismember the Alamo, where you buy a ticket, and it was an all-day ticket, and you go up there. And, of course, Alamo Draft House is one of those places where you go to the theater, and they have nice food, like really good food, and endless popcorn and soda and all this stuff. But you sit there all day. It's 4 horror films, and they don't tell you what they're going to show you ahead of time. And they did that twice, and it was just marvelous. I loved every minute of it. It was so goofy, kind of waiting to see what the next one was, and seeing this terrible Mexican knockoff of Nightmare on Elm Street that was so weird and so lo-fi, and so I just adored that. But they ended up closing the Alamo up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So this year I got a couple of friends together, and we did our own version of that, where I cooked food. We had pizza and ribs, and all of us brought a horror film and didn't tell each other what it was, and then we did it. And it was great because the 3 of us each have very different loves. So I had a feminist J-horror film from a couple of years ago that was truly surreal and wondrous, and they were freaked out. They were like, "What was that?" at the end, and that was what I wanted. And then my other friend is very conventional, so we watched the Belko Experiment, which is just kind of this brutal thing that James Gunn did. But then my friend Steve has a very eclectic taste, so he brought a Canadian horror film from the 1970s, directed by a French director with an Italian crew, called Kathy's Curse, and it was bad. It was so deliciously bad.
Yes, it is.
Oh, so bad. But I couldn't think of 3 more different films, and it was I just loved it, and I hope to make that an annual Halloween tradition. Though the Kathy's Curse Blu-ray did break my PS4, and now I have to send it in. So the movie's that bad.
Canadian films win.
You've seen it, Kate?
Broken PS4s in his wake.
Yeah, I went through a phase where I was obsessed with 60s and 70s horror in my early 20s, and I would watch anything I could get my hands on, and that was definitely one of them. And I'm good for you.
Yep, absolutely.
You made it to the end.
Wow, that sounds. I'm glad you enjoyed it, man.
I had a great time. There was lots of candy, so that may have been on a sugar high all day.
Candy plus horror movies. You can't go wrong.
True.
Rach, what is giving you life?
Kate's going to laugh at me because I haven't shut up about this stupid thing. So, for some context, I am super into media. I do not marathon media. I was going to record an episode of Plus One Forward a couple weeks ago, and I had the world's worst migraine. And I just could not move. I could sit on the couch and just not do anything else, and it could be functional. So I turned on the PS4 and discovered, one, Amazon streaming is finally on the PS4 in Canada. Thank God. It's been forever. Which meant that Amazon had optioned a TV show from Japan I really wanted to watch. And then 3 days later, I had watched all of the TV show recreators, and it blew my mind. It's a urban fantasy series, but instead of using magic, it uses the conceit that if you create a fictional character, a fictional world, and depending on how large your audience is, that world exists via multiverse theory, which raises a lot of uncomfortable questions as role players. It's like, if your characters made it into the real world, what would they do, and what would their relationship with you be like? Which is a question I would really want to put forth to my other co-hosts.
Okay, then. Nope.
No bueno.
I know what happens with Kate's characters. Oh, God.
Everyone
I would
does.
move. I would just move.
Away. See, that's the starting point of the series. It also blew my mind because, I heard a lot of buzz about, this is exploring sort of tropes and anime and tropes in Japanese pop culture. It is an intense discussion about toxic online culture, like to the point where I was not prepared for it. And there's been a couple of pieces of media that have come out recently about this online bullying and the emotional impact that can have on people. And that's really what this show's B plot is all about. And I could sort of see it coming. And when it's not that big of a spoiler. So trigger warning, the show does open with a suicide and they show it on screen. And I was like, okay, now I need to see how this fits into the rest of the show. And when it gets to the end and what it sort of says through you have a male character who was a contributing factor to the situation that played out, and just how he comprehends the situation seemed very, like a lot more aware than other pieces of media I've seen handling this subject matter, which is basically teenage suicide. It is attached to a show where you do have people from fictional universes existing in the real world and having really philosophical and strange discussions about this. So yeah, just in terms of just an urban fantasy show that is exploring facets of urban fantasy I did not expect or think about, also discussing media. Oh my God, the best.
Man. That is trippy.
That sounds awesome.
Should write that game.
I might be making notes.
Well, everyone, I think that brings this Gauntlet Con wrap-up episode to a close. As we said during the episode, if you'd like to game with us, we have games posted as of this episode, posted for November, December, and January, and there are some openings out there for some of them, so give them a peek. If you are interested in supporting us, we do have a Patreon, and we would welcome that support. If you'd like to come in, join the Slack, or be part of the week preview game signups, all of those are your option. Of course, getting access to the Codex, which, by the way, the new Codex will be out by the time this episode's out, and it's a bangin' cool this episode. This issue of Codex I'm super excited about because it has a game from one of our community members. And there's some cool stuff in there that lots of community members contributed to. So I cannot wait to see that out in the wild. Let's see. We also are on Twitter. We average at least 2 tweets per week. Is that the count?
Around that. Yeah.
2 tweets per week.
I guess
they
that's
were a
on
lot
Twitter.
more frequent leading up to Gauntlet Con.
Yes.
I'll tell you that much. But,
I'm Zero Games.
And the Gauntlet Con YouTube channel has enough actual play of RPGs from Gauntlet Con that you could watch a game a night from now until the end of the year. And we have 10 panels, 10 hours worth of panels. Mm-hmm. If you've got some time to kill and you want to watch some awesome games, there is a bevy of awesome on there.
We got you.
Indeed. Well, Kate, Blue Stockings is where you blog, and you've got a Patreon supporting that. Any other contact info you want to give out if people want to follow up with you?
No.
Fair enough.
I'm in the Gauntlet. You can find me at the Gauntlet.
That's right. And Rach blogs at Thacos at Midnight.
When she remembers to.
When she remembers to. And I'm sorry, Kate and Rach are also part of the semi-annual podcast. It's like D&D, which is usually in the off months when Breakout Con isn't crazy busy or Tag isn't crazy busy or, oh gosh.
Are there those
Fan
months?
Expo. There
let's
are.
Let's not talk about it.
There used to be con season, and now it's just con, and I don't know when it ends.
It's so funny.
It's
It's
kind
like
of
the
not.
baseball season. So cool. And then Lowell, the Any
Don't
award-winning blogger at a one an Any
It's
Age
real.
of
Yes.
Ravens.
I saw
Yes.
He's gorgeous, y'all. And he co-hosts the Play on Target podcast with the aforementioned Sherry, who is the superstar of the show.
She's
You
awesome.
should check the backlog
Yep.
for anything that says Sherry's in it, because she's like
They're the better episodes.
stuff. Yeah, they are absolutely the better episodes. People say smart stuff that you've probably heard before, and then Sherry comes on and goes, "Well, actually," I'm like, damn her. Well, actually, these are the best.
Yes.
So yes, other than gauntlet-rpg.com, which is our website, our Google Plus communities, we have the Gauntlet, where we have some chatter going on there, and we will often talk about podcast releases and the like. And then the Gauntlet Hangouts community, which is the Gauntlet and the Gauntlet Hangouts. That is where we will post up the games that we are hosting, playing, and GMing. Thank you very much, Lowell.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rach.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much, Kate.
And thank you, Rich.